This is a book written in a code that no one has been able to crack. Shortly before the First World War, a rare books dealer from Poland came across an exceptional find, a manuscript written in a mysterious, unknown language that for centuries no one has been able to decipher. The man in question went by the name Wilfrid Voynich. A revolutionary in his youth, he escaped imprisonment in Siberia and fled to the United Kingdom, where he built a new life in antiques. His specialty was books. He loved nothing more than discovering a rare manuscript or getting his hands on a coveted first edition. And he frequently traveled around Europe, scouring prestigious libraries and estate sales for new acquisitions. In the year 1912, he purchased 30 manuscripts from the Villa Mondragone, situated in the hills about 12 miles from Rome. The villa was owned by the Jesuits, who operated a college there and were in the process of selling some assets in order to raise funds. Of the manuscripts that Voynich purchased, there was one that he grew obsessed with and refused to sell. For years, he labored to gain the interest of scholars on this remarkable text, one that hadn't been seen in over 200 years. That text is now named after him, the Voynich Manuscript, and its mysteries remain unsolved. I'm Nicole Miras, and this is Fireside Fables. It's quite a gloomy day today, so it's definitely a day for a nice black tea. The Voynich Manuscript is a fascinating historical mystery, and if you love historical mysteries as well as folklore, spooky stories, ghosts, witches, you name it, then you should definitely subscribe to Fireside Fables. We've discussed everything from the Edinburgh fairy coffins to the green children of Woolpit to Mother Shipton, the Yorkshire prophetess. If you're a curious person with an interest in history or folklore, then I would love to have you join me here every week. When I say that the Voynich Manuscript is indecipherable, I truly mean indecipherable. Some of the world's greatest code breakers, from Alan Turing to Prescott Currier to William and Elizabeth Friedman, have been unable to crack it. And while plenty of scholars have claimed at various points to have unraveled the manuscript's secrets, no one has been able to prove this yet. Here's what we do know. The Voynich Manuscript is written in what scholars have dubbed Voynichese, a language that does bear repeating grammatical patterns as well as identifiable roots, prefixes, and suffixes. More recent studies suggest that this is not a made-up language, such as the plethora of invented languages in Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, but rather a code for a natural language, such as English or Spanish. However, we don't know for sure if that's true, and we certainly don't know what language it might be. But we now have the ability to carbon date this manuscript. Its pages are vellum, a high-quality parchment made from calf skin. Vellum is common in these surviving medieval manuscripts that we still have because vellum, of course, is highly durable. The vellum of the Voynich Manuscript was carbon dated to 1404 to 1438. About 240 pages survive, though there's some evidence that a few pages could be missing. Now, just because the vellum dates to the early 15th century doesn't necessarily mean that's when the manuscript was written. But in this case, the formulation of the ink and the botanical pigments used are consistent with recipes from that period. The ink in this case was made from oak gall, which would traditionally be mixed with iron sulfate and other components to make a permanent ink resistant to fading. If the text itself is mysterious, the images don't help much. Some are astrological, though keep in mind that at this point in history, astrology was seen as a natural science rather than a strictly spiritual pursuit. Others include very detailed but unidentifiable images of plants. There's also a ton of nude women, sometimes in baths. According to Voynich scholar Lisa Fagan Davis, there's enough stylistic difference in the text in different sections to suggest that there was not one, but two scribes behind this manuscript. Two people who learned how to write in Voynichese and for some reason decided to give enormous amounts of time to this manuscript. And if the book itself is a mystery, its provenance isn't any clearer. The earliest known reference to this text comes from a letter written by the Czech alchemist George Barisk, who lived from 1585 to 1662. Barisk was trying to decipher this impossible manuscript, so he reached out to the Jesuit scholar Althanius Kircher from the Collegio Romano, who had claimed to decipher Egyptian hieroglyphs. Of course, if you've watched any of my videos on Egyptian archaeology, then you know that Kircher did not decode the hieroglyphs. This wasn't made possible until the discovery of the Rosetta Stone in 1799. Anyway, so Barisk writes to Kircher and sends along some samples of the text. Maybe Kircher can figure it out. Kircher wants to get his hands on this book. He is intrigued, to say the least. But it wouldn't come into Kircher's possession until after Barisk's death. Barisk left it to his friend, Johannes Marcus Marci, who was then the rector of the University of Prague, now known as Charles University. The rector then gave it to Kircher, and in an accompanying letter, he wrote, "Dr. Raphael, a tutor in the Bohemian language to Ferdinand III, then King of Bohemia, told me the said book belonged to the Emperor Rudolph, and that he presented to the bearer who brought him the book 600 ducats. He believed the author was Roger Bacon, the Englishman." Recently, I shared an episode about Johannes Friedrich Butker, the alchemist who was trying to discover the formula for the Philosopher's Stone and accidentally found the recipe for hard-paste porcelain instead. We talked about the role that alchemists played in royal courts during the medieval and early modern periods. And one monarch who was particularly obsessed with alchemy was Emperor Rudolph II of the Holy Roman Empire. Rudolph is exactly the kind of person who would have wanted a mysterious book like this, and there is some evidence that it could have been in his library. On the first page of the manuscript, you can see the barely visible signature of Jacobus Horczycki de Tepenec, the head of Rudolph's botanical gardens in Prague and one of the emperor's personal physicians. Since Rudolph owed Tepenec money when he died, it's possible that the book was part of his repayment. Though, of course, as with many things related to the Voynich manuscript, we don't know for sure. There's also speculation that Voynich may have forged the signature in order to draw a tighter connection to Rudolph II, though, again, we don't know. The theory about Roger Bacon has been disproven thanks to carbon dating. Roger Bacon, if you're unfamiliar, was a Franciscan friar and polymath, a leading scholar in medieval England who lived during the 1200s. Given that the vellum was carbon dated to the early 1400s, Bacon could not have been the author. After Kircher acquired the manuscript, it dropped out of the record for over 200 years, and it likely remained at the Collegio until the unification of Italy in the 19th century, when many church properties were being confiscated, and faculty had to make a mad dash to take whatever books they wanted home, lest they become government property. The university's rector then took the Voynich manuscript to the Villa Mondragone, which was housing a Jesuit college. And then, a few decades later, Wilfrid Voynich purchased the manuscript and brought it to the public's attention. The mysteries of the Voynich manuscript ultimately remain unsolved. Is it an alchemical treatise, a medical text, a practical joke? Many scholars have claimed to unravel its mysteries, but ultimately none have proven successful. Perhaps it will remain unsolved in our lifetimes, or perhaps someone out there, maybe even one of you, holds the key. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to subscribe and let me know in the comments if you have an idea for a future episode. Be well, and I'll see you next time.